Should voting in elections be mandatory?
I don't think voting in elections should be mandatory. I don't think you're gonna get a person in power that you'd want if everyone was just forced to vote. You don't really have their choice in a sense, if that makes any sense. Like, you're just kind of forcing them to pick a person, so they're not actually gonna care about who they pick.
A definite yes. I think that there's just not enough people taking interest in what's going on, and then they complain about it later on. Definitely it should be mandatory. Take responsibility.
Yes, actually, it's mandatory in Australia, and I think that it's a public responsibility. Mind you, there are nuances about making voting mandatory, so there may be exceptions and issues to deal with, but in principle, yes, I think it should be a part of our public responsibility to vote.
No, I don't agree with that at all. No.
It's a personal choice.
Yeah, it's a personal choice, and the fact that it is a right, so it should be a right in the same token if it's not something that you want to participate in.
That's an interesting question, isn't it? I think it probably should be, actually. I mean, you would like to think that people would vote, but people are lazy sometimes, and it probably wouldn't lead to a better democracy.
It's a great question. I think it's an interesting exercise. Some countries do, and I know our rates of participation have been going down, so maybe that would be a good idea. Yeah, I would be in favor.
I think that's a way more complicated question than it sounds. I think there's some countries that do that, and I don't think it, as far as I know, I don't think it worked as well as it was expected to. I think the better approach is to inspire people to want to vote.
Absolutely not. We live in a free world, or a free country, right? That's part of the, democracy, right?
I mean, I think it's a privilege to be able to vote, and it's our right it's a right. People worked hard for us to be able to vote, so I think it's our duty to sorry, French is my first language. I think it's our duty to vote and to make sure our voice is heard.
Considering the drop in the percentage who are voting, especially municipally over the past few decades, I think it's very necessary to do that and to retain our democracy so that the majority doesn't have a reason to complain that, well, I don't like who got elected when they don't vote. When only 30% of the population dictates how the country is governed, then I believe it should be mandatory. I believe it's a civic responsibility.
No, definitely not. Imagine if it was mandatory and people who are totally uneducated have to make a vote. There's no way. That's like, I feel like there's so many people that aren't educated already and they're voting. So definitely not. I feel like people who care enough will vote, hopefully. And the people who don't probably shouldn't be voting anyway.
A lot of people are jaded or feel disenfranchised or just think, is anything really changing because of these people? So ideally, if there was a way we could have new conversations or ways where that we can bring the politician or the leadership in our land closer to the people, more of an interaction that would engage them, and more people would be motivated to vote because of engagement. I'm not sure I'd want to impose mandatory voting, but those are observations I would have.
I think so, but it has to be enforceable. Like our current system, as far as like going in or this whole like mail order thing, it's kind of silly. I think if there's an automated way to secure it, that'd be the way to go, and you'd have way more participation.
That's really a crazy question. I really believe it's good that we have a choice, and I think if it's mandatory, it can cause trouble. So no, I think we have a choice, and I think that's a great thing about living in a democracy.
To mandate it, yes, but you'd have to also have a reform of the political system that would allow for greater voice and greater choice.
That's a really good question, actually. I do like the idea, but at the same time, I'm not sure if everybody would agree with that. So it's one of those things that personally I find it very important. But whether to make it mandatory for everybody, if that's not their inclination, might be a bit tricky.
That's a really tricky question. If we can't get over the apathy that so many people seem to have, either through lack of credible candidates or some other thing that people don't seem to feel it makes a difference, I don't know. Would a mandatory vote be acceptable? It might be something to look at.
So some people make a point by not voting. And I want to leave that up to the person. I don't want to dictate to that person what they should do. I will always be on the side of using your ability to vote. Please use it as much as you can, but I don't want to dictate to people what they should do.
Being a citizen, being able to vote, should be a privilege and a right, and something that we all exercise. Most Canadians don't do it. I don't know why they don't do it. Making them do it, I mean, how would you police it? It would be awful. So making it mandatory would be, I think it'd be unmanageable.